Hello world, this is Kevin from Fiction Factory, and you're listening to DC and DH on the DND Dynamite 80s podcast.
All right. Welcome aboard, everybody. Glad to have you again for another podcast. We have a very special guest join us today, Randy Cross, who actually played for the 49ers professionally for numbers of years in the 80s, and we'll talk quite a bit about that. He also is now doing his own podcast and has been with CBS as a commentator and some other things too that we'll get into as well. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. It's it's football season. It's almost Thanksgiving. How bad could it be?
That's right. That's exactly right. Randy, let me start with your playing career first and foremost. If I read correctly, I believe you were born in New York and then worked your way out west. I also, if I'm correct on this, your father was an actor.
Yeah, that sort of is the reason for the whole Brooklyn, then moving to LA.
Okay.
Unless you're my age, you don't know that the TV business at one point was based in New York, and the movie business was based in LA. And there really wasn't that much TV. It was all kind of radio in the early 50s, even still then. But and even the stuff that was TV, it was studios in New York. It moved to LA. More and more of the movie stuff was. So I was born in 54.
Okay.
So you can add, how old I am. But my family moved to LA about the same time as the Brooklyn Dodgers did.
Oh wow!
Back in 58. So actually the first sporting event I went to that I barely have any memory of, but was the 59 World Series, which was between the Dodgers and the White Sox.
Oh wow!
But I moved there. My dad was an actor. He was a character actor, I guess is the term, or he used to refer to it. I'm a working actor.
Okay.
But he had a TV series back in the early 60s for a couple of years. It was called The Blue Angels. It was about the Navy pilots.
Yes.
And if you watched any Westerns or crime series where somebody was always, getting shot or stabbed or something, or, that was the first thing we always asked my dad. He'd come home and go, I've got a piece on Gunsmoke, or I got Big Valley or Rifleman or something. And the first question was always, do you die? And he goes, yeah, but not till the end. But it was fun. It was a unique way to grow up, to put it lightly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then you followed up, you actually had a career at UCLA, and then worked your way into the College Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that. Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Here is something that I know is got to be special, to be a part of 3 different Super Bowl teams. And a lot of players never get that chance to be in one game. Kind of explain the dynasty of that bunch in the 80s.
Yeah, it was a very unique group. There weren't many of us that were involved in all 3 of them that I was involved in. Okay. Just a handful. But it came together, started coming together in 80, and then 81 was when it really came together, when Bill made some trades and drafted a defensive backfield, basically, with Ronnie and Eric Wright and Carlton Williamson. Signed a free agent that was basically working at a pharmacy by the name of Dwight Hicks. And he had a great career. And no, we had a unbelievable defense, which sadly through the whole 80s, only people that played against us really knew that. You could have sworn that we were basically an offense that happened to, win games, but because of Joe and Jerry and Roger and some of those great players. But we had an amazing defense, and it started in 81. We were horrendous in 82. We almost went to another Super Bowl in 83. We were almost perfect in 84. And then the 88 team, which was my last year, we won it all again. And that was a fairly improbable Super Bowl team.
Uh-huh.
You know, and they always, people always ask you who was your favorite team or who was your best team. I don't have a favorite, kind of like picking a favorite kid, but first one was the first one. That's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
84 was the best team I ever played on. And the 88 team, that was my last game on the way out. And I mean, that team, we were 6-5 after 11 games. So when we get to this time of the year every season or so,
yeah.
I always kind of remind people that it's not always the teams that are, 10-1 that win Super Bowls. That sometimes teams come off the pace and do it, as we did that year.
Right. We all know what kind of coach Bill Walsh was. What define to me what else he was to you?
He was a friend, mentor. Because when he first got there in 79,
Mm-hmm.
we got to be a really close-knit group. Those of us that had kind of been there for a while.
Right.
And then we started to win. We kind of betrayed that trust in 82, that strike year, for a lot of reasons. So that relationship was never really quite the same. But he had an amazing sense of humor, just wicked. Guy to be around. And when I retired, and he retired after the same game that I did, we were members of the same country club in the Bay Area.
Okay.
And we used to go out and walk 18 holes together and get a chance to talk. And that was a fun experience because he was getting to the point where he couldn't play tennis anymore because he loved tennis, but he wanted to still get out. So he had to play golf. And he's like all of it. He was like very, very human, like all of it. That game is impossible to master.
Sure.
And that drove him nuts because he liked doing things perfect.
That's what I was about to ask you. He was a perfectionist.
Oh yeah. And that was the whole. He did things his way.
Oh wow.
And there's still being a lot of the things that he did were decades, if not several decades ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
For instance, once we got to October, we never hit in practice. Never.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We'd bring our pads out to do 1-on-1 pass rush and 9-on-7, the line and linebackers, the running backs. But other than that, he taught us how to practice full speed. And it was very much understood. If you couldn't do it, you were going to have to be in full pads, and you were going to have to do the hitting and everything else.
Right.
But we never wore those pads. A lot of things like that he did that people now it's fairly commonplace, either by legislation because they don't want guys getting hit that often, or just by common sense because the human body is not made to take the beating that football provides. Right.
So he was well ahead of his time on a lot of that stuff. And wow.
Well ahead, yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Who's one of the teammates that sticks out to you as being one of those unique leaders?
One of our real leaders was a guy that, unfortunately not enough people really know about. There's a guy named Keith Fonhorst.
Oh wow.
He was our right tackle. The guy played next to me because I played, contrary to popular opinion and a certain Miller Lite series of ads I did. I played guard the majority of my season, my career.
Right.
9.5 of my 13 years. So he was my right tackle. And he was really, really good. kind of quietly good. And you see a lot of players that kind of play like him. I mean, you don't really notice him because the guy he plays against usually doesn't do much. So you don't hear that guy's name. So that means, and that's the hazard of being a good offensive lineman is most people that commentate on the game aren't linemen, so they don't know what to look for.
Right.
And like a guy like Keith, you didn't hear a guy's name. It was, oh, okay, well, I guess he didn't play that well. Well, there's a reason for that. That was because the guy playing against him was pretty doggone good. So Keith would be a guy like that. I think Russ Francis, who was one of our great tight ends.
Yes.
We had in the 80s.
Yes.
Was amazing. Another guy that never really got the play that he should have, at least from the other players in the media. John Taylor, who was a kick returner and a wide receiver.
Wide receiver. Yep.
Yeah. Who he didn't teach Jerry Rice anything, because I don't think anybody ever taught Jerry anything.
Yeah.
But Jerry played with John, and John's ability to run after the catch was something that Bill almost designed an offense around, taking advantage of that. And then you had a Jerry Rice with his skill sets, and you augment that with that.
Right.
It was very, very special. So that's the guy. And then you go over to the defensive side. I give you a list as long as your arm of, the Keena Turners and people like that.
Yeah.
Eric Wright, Carlton Williamson, Jack Reynolds, guys.
Old Tennessee. Yeah. That's our Tennessee guy.
People know of him or of them, but they were really, really special football players.
Speaking of Reynolds, now have you heard this story? I don't know if it's how accurate it is or not. Now, I think this happened during his college days, where he actually hacksawed a car in half. And that's how he kind of got his name. Yeah, from front to back, right down the middle. Okay, so that is true. Yeah. Okay. I'd heard that. It was a Jeep. It was a Jeep. Okay. Yeah, he was a car nut. And when he played with the Niners, he made friends with a mechanic that was in, I think, San Mateo. Okay. And Jack rented an apartment above this mechanic's garage. And Jack did it so he could, work on cars when he wasn't working on football. And he just loved doing that stuff. Jack was very, very different. He worked hard at being different. He worked hard at everything, but he worked hard at being different. Okay. Wow. Okay. Obviously Joe Montana, great leader, I would say. Yeah. Amazing quarterback. Yeah. Still to this day, and you get all that stuff about, who would you pick and who's the greatest. My pat answer, I look at people and go, what are you, crazy? I mean, I'm going to go with the guy that won me rings. Sure. But, if I always put a question like this, if you look at quarterbacks, no matter who's your favorite quarterback, if you had 80 yards to go, a minute and 10 seconds and one timeout, who, you're down by 4, you got to score a touchdown. Who do you want? Right. Which quarterback do you want on the field for you? In that situation? Sure. And I was in enough games. We had a game in 80 that kind of started it all as far as comebacks and all that goes. I mean, we were down to New Orleans Saints at halftime, 35-7. And we came back and beat them 38-35. And that was kind of the genesis of never really being out of games because you always thought there was a chance. Right. Joe just had that special thing about him. Always did. Yeah. It just took a lot of people a while to figure that out. Right. Does the catch of the Dallas game, is that one of the main ones that sticks out to you other than, of course, Super Bowls? Yeah. I mean, it was a great revenge
kind of thing for
Yeah.
us, because
Yeah.
Dallas had beaten the crap out of us in the regular season a few years in a row before that. And then we had returned the favor in the regular season. And as we started to move towards the playoffs and then into the playoffs, a lot of the Dallas players made a point of saying, well, if we play them again, they're going to find out about the real Cowboys. Because they still haven't seen the real Cowboys.
Yeah.
And, it's a legendary game in NFL history.
Yes.
I would tell people, look it up, go on YouTube. You can watch a good bit of it still.
Yep.
But also get a box score. And look at the number of fumbles and the number of turnovers and the number of penalties. It was a pretty sloppy game for a championship game.
Yeah.
But it's all remembered for the sequence of about the last 2 minutes of the game, minute and 51.
Yeah.
That, we drove down, scored. They turned around, got the ball, and almost turned around and scored it on us.
Yeah.
But it was not an artistically pleasing football effort by both teams.
Yeah. That's gotta be cool though, to be a part of history like that. To say, I got to be there and perform in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were the first team to ever win 18 games.
Oh, okay.
The 84 team. Of course, the Bears the next year went 19-0.
Sure.
And I tell people all the time that, they talk about dominant teams and dominant years and periods and eras and whatnot. And I say, well, okay, but I would put our 84 team that was 18-1, the Bears that were 19-0, and the 86 Giants who were 17-2. That was as dominant a 3-year run by teams.
Yes.
AFC, NFC, whatever you want to say, AFL, NFL, as dominant a 3-year run as the league's ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So very successful career. And then did you get just right into the TV work, the commentary and all that? Straight from it, or did you take some time off?
I'll make this. I'll edit this, which I'm usually not good at, but I'll edit. I started doing radio because I was hurt in an off-season charity event accident.
Okay.
So I had a buddy that was a general manager of a radio station in San Francisco, and he called me up and he goes, "Well, you're just sitting around." I had a big cast on my leg. He goes, "If I send a limo to pick you up in the morning, will you come up to the studio and read the sports on the radio? Like 6 to 10, because you're not doing anything. You're not going to practice." And I said, "Yeah, I'll try that. What the hell?" So I went up there and I'd crutching it off into the station, and I'd get in a little thing. And it was the old, the news came off almost like a ticker tape type of a machine back then. So it was a rip and read thing. Yeah. So you had to put it together and what your stories were going to be. It was fun. Yeah. Well, right after that, I started doing some radio, and I was told by the reporters, you speak well, you ought to go into the media side and give it a go. So I started doing radio right after that, Monday night show on KCBS right after Monday Night Football, which now that I'm on the East Coast sounds weird, but heck, Monday Night Football is over by 9:15 on the West Coast.
Yes.
So I do that till 10 o'clock every night on Mondays. And then I started doing my own TV show. So I had a radio and TV show during the season. And in 84, 85, the USFL years, I was hired to do games as a commentator with a guy named Barry Tompkins for the Oakland Invaders. Okay. Because they signed a national deal to do TV, but every local market had to have their own broadcast availability. So I did that. And so that was a great opportunity for me. And every offseason, starting about 85, I'd send the networks a tape.
Ah.
I'd edit together what I'd done
Yeah.
during the year, and I'd send it off to the networks.
Ah.
So when I retired after 88, it was kind of a natural.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for 3 of them: ESPN, NBC, and CBS. And CBS hired me. So I started doing that in 89.
Okay.
So I've had a lot of other jobs, but as far as the public knows, I've done 2 things. I played football and I've been on TV.
Gotcha.
I've done radio too, but
Yeah.
so ever since 89, I've been really, really lucky. I have no delusions, because
Yeah.
most guys don't last but 2 or 3 years tops doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Talk to me a little bit about, on the way out here, about your podcast and how all that's set up.
Yeah, I started doing it now a few years back. And I'm not doing it right now quite as frequently as I was, mainly because my producer and his wife had to move to Detroit. So it kind of affects our schedule a little bit, even with the Zoom world and everything else we've been in the last 18 months.
Right.
But I just liked it. It's not a typical podcast like yours. It's audio and visual. And I do we do different things, different subjects. It's not just football. It's not just sports.
Okay.
So whatever kind of tweaks me, I just do it. And I talk to people like that. So I think it's fun. And ultimately I'm the one that's paying for it. So if I'm the one that think it's fun, then that's what I'm going to do.
There you go. Well, Randy, I appreciate your time. Like I said, we just wanted to kind of catch up on that great 80s decade of just incredible teams. And fascinated by your work, and look forward to we'll get that out on our podcast for people to check you out.
Well, thanks. Yeah, you can always get the podcast, and everything else I do lives at randycross.com. Perfect,
my friend. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.